Greetings, everybody. How are you all doing? Good evening, everybody. Trust you all doing great. Good evening on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram. Welcome. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Kindly power up your screen, share the live. Greetings, everybody. Kindly power up your screen and share the live. Welcome to this special session. If you're joining on YouTube, tell us where you're joining from. If you're joining on LinkedIn, tell us where you're joining from. If you're joining on TikTok, tell us where you're joining from. If you're also joining from IG, tell us where you're joining from. Welcome. We're going to be talking about sexuality today. Actually, I've been researching into this subject for many years now. Actually, I think it's more than 10, 12 years since I've been researching into this subject of sexuality. And despite that, I've not really referred to myself as some kind of sexuality expert. You know. But next year, I plan to publish a book on it. Welcome. I'll tap your screen and share the light. Invite your friends. Invite your colleagues. Invite your family and friends. Now, I like to just say this. Whatever I teach, whatever subject I teach on, know that I teach you to reinforce your power, either as a visionary person, or a responsible person, or an entrepreneurial person. Right? That is why I decide to teach on anything to help reinforce, um, you know, you being a visionary person, you being a responsible person, and you being an entrepreneur. Now, let's start off by defining sexuality. What is sexuality? What is sexuality? I don't know how to remind. I don't What is sexuality? Can anybody tell us in comment? I'm not even seeing anybody. What's really happening here? Valentine Sexuality. Since TikTok is deliberately, they don't want, they're deliberately making things difficult. Welcome. What is sexuality? Now, sexuality is a central aspect of being human. Sexuality is a central aspect of being human that encompasses a person's capacity for sexual feelings, emotional consciousness building, and erotic experiences. And it is not solely about physical acts, but it is rather a complex, multidimensional part of a person's identity, and that includes a few key components. Now, when we talk about identity, it begins from biological identity. When we talk about sexuality and we talk about the biological aspect of sexuality, we're talking about the anatomy, the physiology, and your genetic characteristics, right? That is associated with being either male, female, or intersex, right? We'll talk about the biological aspect. We'll talk about the gender identity. Apart from your gender as either being male or female, um, your background will influence your sexuality as well. You know, a guy who grew up amongst ladies most of the time behaves have this tendency to behave like ladies as well. But it doesn't in any way diminish the fact that he's a guy, right? But if there was not precise and deliberate balance initiated by the father of that guy, he most likely will grow up behaving, displaying female characteristics. And it might go a long way in forming, his internal, deeply held sense of gender, which is why you find some people say that even though they are male, they have male genital organs. They say that they feel like they are female on the inside. There are different factors to consider when it comes to that. Also, a person's sexual orientation influences their sexuality, right? Talking about uh, their enduring pattern of emotional, romantic, sexual attractions to others, right? We have what is called heterosexuals. We also have what is called homosexuals. We also have what is called bisexuals. We also have what is called asexuals, right? Sexual orientation. When I was deeply religious, I used to just want to, automatically judge people who are not in alignment with the traditional sexual norms, which is naturally my own stance, right? But I began to, give people the benefit of the doubt because a lot of times people's reality is powered by the environment they grow up in, which is why I like to say to people that environment is destiny. You know, I've you know I've been able to help two people, who were homosexuals to recede back to their traditional, natural sexual orientation. One it was a lesbian, and one was a gay guy, right? But it is not by force. When it comes to people's sexual orientation, it is not by force. It is not my job to force my sexual orientation on anybody. Rather, I position myself to help them gain fundamental understanding from this, of sexuality from the standpoint of universality. Right? Sexual orientation is one. Eroticism is another thing to consider when it comes to sexuality. Understanding sexuality, which is the capacity for experiencing sexual arousal, capacity for experiencing pleasure, um, and it includes your thoughts, your desires, and even maybe your fantasies. That is eroticism. And then also, social and cultural influences, right? The way sexuality is expressed and understood in, within your social circles, within your cultural circle, uh, profoundly shapes your sexuality, right? Except you are someone who operates outside of the box, except you are someone who is adventurous, right? It will influence the way into your social and cultural um, you know influences will influence your sexuality. So sexuality is a fundamental part of who we are. It is expressed or experienced in thoughts, in desires, in beliefs, in attitudes, in values, in behaviors, in practices, in roles, in relationships. Sexuality is unique to every individual and can evolve throughout a person's life, right? Type hashtag sexuality in the comment section. Type hashtag sexuality in the comment section. Um, we'll see how far we can go with this. If we're able to complete it today, so be it. If not, maybe we'll complete it tomorrow. Most of the time, when I've had to come to the public domain to talk about sexuality, I've mostly focused on, the male sexual energy, male sexuality. I'm mostly focused on that. But I plan to also touch on women's sexual, women's sexuality, right? So if I'm not able to touch on that today, then we'll have that tomorrow, right? Now, I like to, start out with this quote that I read a couple of years ago about the male sexual energy or sexual energy in general. It says that there is no medicine or food and no spiritual salvation that can prolong a man's life if he fails to understand or practice the harmony of sexual energy. Type hashtag sexuality in the comment section. If you're just joining us. And also kindly power tap the screen and share the live. Invite your friends, you know, invite your friends to join us. And when we talk about sexuality, it is pretty important to understand the concept of the life force. The concept of the life force. I like to define the life force, the electricity of the human body. The electricity of the human body. It is the universe permeating into your essence. The universe permeating into your essence. See, the universe is filled with different kinds of dynamic energy, and it is every person's responsibility to creatively transform his or her energy over the course of their lifetime, right? Transform it back to its original state of harmonious balance. I know some people who know, I won't say know me intimately, but they know me personally, but there are still certain things they don't know about me. And they wonder how I'm able to do certain things that most guys are not able to do. I'm talking from a standpoint of the corridors of sexuality. For instance, all through 2025 was my year of celibacy, right? All through 2025, I didn't have sex. And even till now, today is 14th of February, which is 45th day of this year. I've not had sex this year. And the reason is because of my understanding of sexuality. Right? The universe is filled with different kinds of dynamic energy. And you can only influence your sexuality from the place of understanding and mastery of the universal life force. Right? Now, aside the universal life force, there is such a thing as sexual essence. Right? Sexual essence. And sexual essence is a powerful vital energy that is generated continuously within the human body. Sexual essence is a powerful vital energy that is generated continuously within the human body. And it is every human being's role that they are dedicated to refining their sexual essence. You have to be perpetually dedicated to refining your sexual essence, because nobody can do it for you. Nobody will do it for you, and nobody can do it. Right? And you can be dedicated to the refinement of your sexual essence with or without your partner. As a matter of fact, see, the person or the people that should have introduced us to the mechanism of the cultivation of our sexuality was supposed to be our parents. But I can bet that the majority of people watching this live right now were not introduced to sexuality by their parents. They figured it out one way or another by themselves. The cultivation of your sexual essence ought to commence even before you start having boyfriend or girlfriend. Right? It ought to commence even before that. Your sexual essence is one of the simplest ways a person can return to pure consciousness and begin to experience the deepest readings of life as your sexual essence. Right? The male sex energy is stored in the sperm. The sperm is the storehouse of the man's sexual energy. And it is really important that you realize or understand that in the days of our ancestors, when the sperm had a potency that was at its highest, right? A single ejaculation could contain between 300 and 600 million sperm cells. A single ejaculation. But in today's world, it has drastically reduced to between 200 million and 400 million sperm cells. But that is still a lot. That is massive. Right? And it is pretty important that you understand that one single ejaculation consumes 30% or even one third, up to one third of your daily energy output. Right? And an ejaculation, one single ejaculation, taxes the male's glandular and immunological system. Just one ejaculation. When I meet ladies who talk about how that they can't allow their man to just ejaculate once and go to bed or whatever. And they're like, no, you have to go multiple rounds. And when they talk about rounds, right? They're talking about ejaculating multiple times. But one single ejaculation of your daily energy output, it is the same energy output that you are supposed to use a fraction of for powering the activities of your day, the business of the day, every other important thing that you're supposed to do. It is still part of that energy output. Guess what? When you ejaculate back to back more than once, the first ejaculation draws from the combined life force, sexual essence, maybe the food that you ate previously. It draws from all of those energy to create the sperm. Now, when you try to ejaculate again without any kind of rest, you are going to be drawing from the storeroom of your kidneys. See, so a lot of men do not realize that too much sex or multiple ejaculation from one sexual activity is part of what is creating problem in their kidneys. Most men don't know this. You are not supposed to ejaculate more than once. You are doing your system a great deal of disservice when you do that. Now, the problem that creates for a lot of ladies is that they are not satisfied. And we're going to talk about that as we move into this. Now, you need to now understand what the mechanics, and we're going to talk about, I think we're going to talk about that a lot tomorrow. We're going to dedicate tomorrow to talking about the female's sexual energy, the female sexuality. We're going to delve deep into that. Tomorrow is going to be the first time I do a holistic deep dive into the female sexuality, because I feel like I'm a man, so I shouldn't be talking about female sexuality, but I've done extensive study into it. So tomorrow we'll talk about that. But today we are talking about the male sexuality. Right? Now understand that before the life force is condensed into sperm, It existed somewhere. Sperm is the condensation of non-sperm life force. In biology, they tell you spermatogenesis, right? But that is not based on the level of research I've done in the past more than a decade. I've come to realize that it's not just spermatogenesis. You know, it is the life force energy, the sexual essence energy, the food energy, the energy of the meridians that connects the different organs and the systems in your body. These are the energies that sex draws from to create sperm. Let's move along. Now, the vital energy, also known as life force, is extracted from three major sources. There are other sources, but these three major sources are important for you to acquaint yourself with. The first major source is the original vital essence you were born with, which is usually stored in your kidneys and in the core of your body. If you're just joining us, kindly power tap your screen and share the light. Invite your friends, right? Right? It is stored in your kidneys and in the core of your body. And this is the fundamental battery of your life. This is the fundamental battery of your body. Now, the second place where energy is extracted for the production of sperm is from food and air. From food and air. Right? The energy extracted from the food you eat and the air you breathe, that energy, part of that energy is also drawn for the production of sperm. Right? And this is the fuel you add daily to your vital essence. The fuel from your food and the fuel from the air you breathe. Right? The third place where energy is drawn from for the creation of sperm is the universal life force, which is the fundamental energy of the entire universe. Right? The fundamental energy of the entire universe, which permeates everything. It permeates everything and is consistently drawn into the human body through breath, conscious breathing. Right? And through the energy centers of the body. Now, it is very important that you understand that the human body is an alchemist vessel. The human body is an alchemist vessel. And in this case, the body is a system for distilling and transforming this raw, non-specific life force into a more potent form. Right? The raw energy, for instance, from food, from air, from the universal force, is first gathered and then circulated. And this is what I like to refer to as non-sperm life force. Right? Non-sperm life force. And the second potent form of the life force energy, that sperm is created from, is through specific practices, through specific practices and natural bodily processes. There are certain exercises that you will do, like breath work, for instance. Breathing in through one nostril and breathing out through the other. These are exercises that makes the life force more readily available to your body system. The third is the most refined form of this physical life force, and it is seen in the production of sperm, which is the reproductive essence. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm making sense, please let me know in the comment section. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm making sense, let me know in the comment section. Right? Let me know in the comment section. The most refined is the reproductive essence, which is semen in men, right? And vaginal fluid or ovum in women, right? And this is considered, the densest fluid. It is the densest physical condensation of one's vital energy, right? And it is pretty important that you understand it from this dimension. When you understand that sperm is created from the condensation of these different energies, you begin to learn to treasure it for what it is. Right? Most men have never learned anything about their sexuality. All they know is that they can have sex with a lady, and then they ejaculate in the process, and then also they experience orgasms, right? But most men have never proactively learned anything about their sexuality. Hence, they are not able to leverage it, leverage that intellect, leverage that knowledge, leverage that power for transforming their lives, for transforming their life outcome. Right? Now, there is such a thing as the drawing up phenomenon. Right? The drawing up phenomenon. Whenever you become sexually aroused, it is not that the body suddenly creates this force. Right? Rather, the body system activates, gather, and condense the available diffused vital energy from all over your body. It draws from your organs, from your blood, from your tissues, and concentrates it in the reproductive organs in order to create the seminal fluid and the powerful experience of orgasm. Right? So, the sperm, arousal is not something that just happens out of the blue. Arousal is gaseous sexual energy. Even though sexual energy, right, in its sense, is in the gaseous state, right? You condense sexual energy from its gaseous state to fluid state, called sperm. Now, there are three major principles for the cultivation of sexual energy. If you don't know the importance of sexual energy, know it now. If you are not deliberately cultivating sexual energy, you are not going to be able to reap its dividends. Now, there are three major principles of sexual energy. The first principle of sexual energy cultivation in men is conservation. Conservation, which is something that most men do not do. Most men do not know how to conserve their sperm when they're having sex. Most men have never experienced semen retention. Most men who have had sex, all the times that they have had sex, they have always ejaculated outward, because there is such a thing as ejaculated inward. Conservation is the first principle of sexual energy cultivation. If you're a man who has never experienced conservation, sexual energy conservation, semen retention. Now, understand that it is not something that most men have heard of, let alone engaging, because maybe the men in their life, their fathers, their uncles, have never also experienced it. And if their father, uncles, have never experienced it, there is no way they will have been able to introduce it to their son or to their nephews. Whereas this is a long, ancient practice that our ancestors practiced for millennia, for entire millennia. It was one of the ways they were able to achieve enlightenment. The conservation of sexual energy. Right? Are you aware that primarily ejaculation is supposed to be the purpose of having children? Primarily. Ejaculation was primarily designed for the purpose of having children. Now, when you ejaculate, and it's not for the purpose of having children, when you ejaculate outward, and it's not for the purpose of having children, it is a wasteful loss of an extremely precious treasure. It's a wasteful loss. Right? And it is one of the ways that men, reduce their longevity, truncate their longevity. It is a wasteful loss. And this energy loss over extended periods of time weakens the physical health of the man. If, as a man, as a mature man, 18 years and above, and from the day you started having sex, from the first day you started having sex and your last sex, if you have ever if you have ever orgasmed and had the sex from the beginning to the end without ejaculating, tell us in the comment section. Because I would like to pick your brain. Because most men always ejaculate when they have sex. Most men. Right? Most men have never experienced sex without ejaculation. Right? This energy loss over extended periods of time weakens the physical health of the man. And it often leads to the unconscious emotional anger And it also gradually robs the man's higher mind and spirit of its power to rejuvenate itself. There are men who don't understand, they can't explain why they are angry at their wives. And it's not necessarily because of what their wives have done to them. It is this subtle, subconscious loss, sense of loss over, extended periods of time. Right? So that's the first principle. The first principle of sexual energy conservation in men is conservation. Now, the second principle of sexual energy conservation in men is transformation. This is even more alien to most men. Because if you have not been able to conserve your semen, you most likely have never experienced the transformation of that semen. When we talk about transformation of your semen, we're talking about raising it to higher centers of your body, not just at the lower center of your sexual organ. For most people, the best they have done with their semen is to ejaculate through their sperm, through their penis. For most men, they have never had secondary experience of semen production. They have never experienced it. Right? Understand that sexual arousal happens in men when the energy that was either stored in their testicles, right, called sexual essence, expands rapidly to higher centers of the body, such as the heart, the brain, the glands, and the nervous system. Right? But you see, this upward movement is cut short by penis ejaculation. That arousal was the energy of, the sexual essence, the energy stored in your testicles prior to maybe an image that activated that arousal. It was part of that sexual essence that was stored in your testicles. Part of it, a tiny fraction of it, was what moved to your brain that created that arousal. But a lot of people do not know how to sustain that arousal. Because chemically speaking, arousal is a fraction of the stored sexual energy in your testicles that made its way to your brain. Oxytocin, flooding your heart, is a fraction of the stored energy as a man in your testicles that went to your heart, that made you feel aroused mentally and heartily. Right? A lot of people have never experienced sustained arousal. They always truncate it on the basis of ejaculation. Right? Most people have never had sex and orgasm without ejaculation. Most men they've never had that experience. And it is part of what defines the essence of your sexuality as a man. It is part of what alchemizes your essence. Right? When you are always ejaculating every single time you have sex, you are never going to come to the point where you are aware of the full power of your sexuality. It will never happen. And for as long as you always have sex that leads to ejaculation for the rest of your life, you will never become aware of the full power of your sexuality. So the second principle of sexual energy cultivation is transformation. Now, the third and final principle of sexual energy cultivation is mastering polarity. Mastering how to balance the polarity of the male and female energies. Right? The yin and yang energy alignment. See, once you learn how to conserve and transform your sexual energy, even if you are still single as a man, you can use meditation to balance the male and female poles that exist inside every man's body, that exists inside your body as a man. That's the third principle of sexual energy cultivation. Right? But in the case of a couple, it is termed dual cultivation. In the case of a couple can learn to balance the field, the energy field that exists between the male and female polarities. Right? They can learn to balance that energy field, that subtle energy. Right? They can learn to balance the field of energy between them by sharing and circulating their subtle energies. This is one of the essence of the concept of foreplay. This is one of the essence. It is more an energy phenomenon. Foreplay is more an energy phenomenon than it is a technique. It is understanding the phenomenon of subtle energies. It is understanding how to create communication between the subtle energies of the male and the female. It is for the purpose of creating harmony between those two polarities. See, the highest goal of all polarities, including romantic polarities, is harmony. That is the highest goal of all polarities. Which is why a harmonious relationship is that which has mastered the merging of opposite poles. There is more to sexuality, intelligence, consciousness, literacy than just penetration. There is way more to it. And the more of sexuality that you can gain mastery of, the phenomenon of sexuality, the more of that phenomenon you can gain mastery of, the more expanded your experience becomes. The more expanded your experience becomes. The science of harmony is something that you have to proactively learn about and master. When we talk about harmony, we're talking about the merging of two poles, the merging of similarly opposing poles. You can have harmony within yourself as a man because you have the two poles within yourself as a man. You can have harmony within yourself as a woman because you have two roles within yourself as a woman. And you can also engineer harmony between yourself and a person of the opposite sex. Now, it is pretty important that you quit overemphasizing physical sex in your sexual energy cultivation practice. The physical sex aspect is very important. You can, most people, that is the be all of sexual energy. That is the be all of their sexual experience, their sexual energy experience, sexuality experience. It is just the sex. And it goes way beyond that. You need to quit overemphasizing physical sex in your sexual energy cultivation practices. Because it is easy to get stuck on the pleasure of the physical sex energy. It is easy for you to get stuck on that pleasure aspect of it, right? Without experiencing the higher subtle energies, right? It is easy for you to get caught up in it when you overemphasize the physical sex, right? Now, cultivating sexual energy is important for nourishing your soul and spirit. Being deliberate about the cultivation of sexual energy is important for nourishing your soul and spirit. But you see, without proper eating habits, without proper exercise, without meditation, without virtual moral behaviors, without love, a holistic and balanced cultivation is not possible. Because without holistic and balanced cultivation, you cannot create harmony. It's not possible. So we need to take cognizance of these different factors in order for us to be able to create harmony. Harmony is sexual bliss. Harmony is the ultimate of sexuality. If you have never experienced harmony in sex, sustained harmony in sex, it is because you have not been proactive about cultivating sexual energy. Right? Now, the experts, the sexuality experts, advises that you should avoid sex without love. Avoid sex without love, because it creates imbalances. It creates imbalances between your physical, mental, and subtle bodies. It creates imbalances. And it is that imbalance or imbalances that create conflict within you. If there is no harmony, there is conflict. It's automatic. When you have sex without love, you are creating these imbalances, and they will manifest in the different aspects of your life. In your physical body, it can manifest as ill health, it can manifest as loss of opportunities, costly mistakes, and all of that. Those imbalances, right? These imbalances interferes and slows down our holistic growth. Don't, masturbation, right, is a sexual act without love. There's no love being cultivated there, and it will create all kinds of imbalances within you, right? A woman seeks tenderness of feeling in a lover, right? And will resent a man who is overly compulsive or preoccupied with just the mechanics of sex. An example of that is when you have sex without love. The woman knows. It is easy for the woman to know. Right? And it's even harmful to you as an individual. You know, prostitutes whose profession is having sex without love, because I mean you can't, I mean, somebody that would maybe sleep with 5 guys in a day or 3 guys in a day cannot be having that sex with them from the place of love. It can't happen. And that is doing a great deal of damage to our soul, a great deal of damage to our subtle energy, to our subtle energies, a great deal of damage to our mind, creating all kinds of conflicts, internal conflicts. If you have ever had the privilege of staying in a neighborhood where there are a lot of prostitutes, you will understand what I'm talking about. Even the atmosphere of that environment is it speaks of conflict. It speaks of chaos, right? Now, dual cultivation of the sexual energy is impossible without the full participation of both the man and the woman. Right? Because that is how, without dual participation, right? Without dual cultivation, most especially from the woman to the man, the woman will not be able to activate a yin energy, which is a powerhouse energy, right? And it is a yin energy that the woman needs for activating what is called womb arousal, which is the highest kind of arousal. Sorry, womb orgasm rather, which is the highest kind of orgasm that a woman experiences. Most women have never experienced it. Most women have never experienced womb orgasm, because most men do not, right? Dual cultivation is impossible without the participation of the woman, because except the woman fully participates in the cultivation, the dual cultivation of sexual energy, she is not able to transform a yin energy upwards. And a yin energy is stored in our ovaries, right? So it's pretty important that you understand that you must regard your woman as more than just a supplier of, the vagina, and see her as someone who is worthy of your full love and regard. The picture that a lot of men have about women is that she supplies our our V. Let me not call the full name before. That's how most men see their woman, and that is the reason next level bliss, sexual bliss, right? Now, for the young men watching me right now, I need you to realize that you do not necessarily need a girlfriend or a woman in order for you to start the practice of cultivating your sexual energy, right? You do not necessarily need to have a girlfriend first in order for you to start. And the reason for that is because in the beginning of this practice, it is easier for you to begin to master how to cultivate the sexual energy alone without the distracting excitement and the heat of the woman's body. Now, this is not something I can just explain on this live broadcast. It is something that I have to be. I can only explain in a physical setting, because there are certain exercises that I can't explain on this live broadcast that a young man can begin to engage in order for them to start learning how to cultivate their sexual energy. Right? Pretty important. Now, the sperm is an extraordinary sexual elixir. The sperm is more powerful, more treasurable than most men have been educated to be aware of. Are you aware that the sages amongst our ancestors considered one drop of semen to be equal in vital power to 100 drops of blood? One drop of semen is equal in vital power to 100 drops of blood. And there are certain ancient school of thoughts that have held that if one can retain the fluid, the sperm, right, for one's entire life, the body will not decay even after death. That is how powerful the sperm is. I have this argument that I share with men and women alike. When it comes to the sperm, you see a lady who was just very slim, petite before marriage, and then 6 months after marriage, all of her curves are coming out. One of my arguments is because of the continuous deposit of the sperm. The sperm is actually very magical, and a lot of men have not been educated to treat it as magically as it is. Right? It is pretty important that you have a holistic, a holistic understanding of the holistic dimensions of the sperm. Right? Because the sperm is actually a miracle. But most people have never been privileged enough to consciously explore its power. Most men have never been privileged enough to do that. Right? When love making is performed with intelligence and discipline, it has the capacity to awaken dominant powers in the mind and in the body. Love making helps to upgrade the nervous and the endocrine systems. The reason most men are ignorant of the spiritual power of sex is because they were never taught. They've never been taught. I mean, you went to primary school, you went to secondary school, you went to tertiary institution, whether it's a polytechnic or a university. You did postgraduate degree, postgraduate, you did master's, you did PhD. Nobody taught you anything about the power of sex. Your religion, Christianity, Islam, zero knowledge about the power of sex. So most men have never proactively explored the power of sex because they were never taught. And you see that you were never taught is not enough. I mean, what I'm doing right now is tantamount to seeds of awakening. Right? Whatever it is that I share all through this life, or all the things I've shared, and all I'm still going to share, they are all crumbs, they are all seeds. Your job is to take it to the next level by yourself, not waiting for somebody like me to come and be spoon feeding you. Because there are many things you're going to discover by yourself. Right? Now, what is the difference between hunger and sexual desire? What is the difference between hunger and sexual desires? Now, many people feel sexually frustrated every now and then. And each time they feel sexually frustrated, what they turn to is food. Right? They turn to food as the alternative gratification, alternative source of gratification, which of course creates imbalance in their health. And obesity, is one of the easiest, what's the word? One of the easiest repercussions of such imbalances. Obesity. Most people are obese. Right? For most people, whenever they feel sexually frustrated, food is the easiest and the quickest substitute that they turn to. And it is the reason why you can find a 40-something-year-old man who is a puppet of instant gratification. Right? Because they have not proactively cultivated their sexual energy. The major difference between food and sex is that sex, the energy of sex, or sex energy, has already been refined and it has already been produced in your body. Right? And it is much easier to digest and absorb into the higher centers of your body because sexual energy is produced in your genitals, it's produced in your testicles. The sperm is produced in your testicles, in your scrotum. Most people, most men have never learned how to take that energy to the upper centers of their body. The only thing they have done with it is to ejaculate it through their penis. That's the only thing they've done from the day they started having sex. And now. Right? And when we talk about sexual frustration, it is the result of not proactively exploring sexual energy, proactively cultivating sexual energy, right? So, see, don't always just turn to food when you are feeling sexually frustrated. Anytime you're feeling sexually frustrated, ask yourself, why am I feeling sexually frustrated? Literally, pick up a pen and a paper and write down whatever comes to your mind. Because if you are trying to use food as an escape from your sexual frustration, it will not end well. It will boomerang, right? So, pretty important. Now, the image of sex or the mere thought of it is um, can instantly enter our brain and alter our entire psychological state as well as our bodily feeling. And it is the reason why sexual energy potentially has a far higher value than food because it is in a ready state, right? It has a far higher value than food as a kind of nourishment needed for emotional and spiritual growth, right? But you must learn to create a balance. You must learn to create the foundational balance, in order for you to be able to explore it positively, explore it advantageously, right? Now, let's look at the biological or the biology of esoteric sex. I'm going to be able to look at that. Should we look at that? Okay, let me just say a few things about it. Now, understand that it has been calculated the number of times that you are meant to ejaculate in your lifetime. From the day you start having sex and the day you die, it is estimated to be around between 5,000 and 6,000 times. An average man is going to ejaculate between 5,000 and 6,000 times in their sexual lifetime. Now, if we do a calculation of that, let's use the 5,000 lifetime ejaculation. Lifetime ejaculation. Let's use the figure. Let's use 5,000. If you became sexually active, let's say you had your first sex at 21, all the way, you continue having sex till, I don't know, maybe 90. That is 70 years. Maybe that 90. That is 70 years. If you divide 5,000, even though it reduces as you grow older, right? But let's just do a mean average, right? 5,000 divided by 70. Who can give us? Somebody should calculate for us. Tell us. 500 divided by 7. So 7 in 5 is 7, meaning 1. 71. So it means that average you are going to have sex 71 times. You're going to ejaculate rather. Ejaculate 71 times per annum. Generally speaking, I say that a male I cannot ejaculate more than 90 times a year. Right? I'm not interested in ejaculating more than 90 times a year. And when I talk about 90 times a year, okay, let's use 90 times a year. For people who are badosky, right? Let's use 90 times a year, right? Let's say you ejaculate 90 times a year. That is approximately one per 4 days. You ejaculate once every 4 days. That is what 90 times a year. See, I like to break these things down like this because a lot of men have never done this. They have never done this breakdown before in their lives. Right? Somebody said that a doctor in Nigeria said that you are meant to ejaculate 21 times a year, 21 times a month, right? Let's do that calculation. 21 times per month. That is 21 times 12. What is 21 times 12? 21 times 10 is 210. 21 times 2 is 42. 210 was 42. 280. Right? 252. So that doctor wants you to ejaculate 252 times a year. And he says that that's one of the ways to prevent prostate cancer, right? I know womanizers who died of prostate cancer. I've not had sex this year, and I will never have prostate cancer. I didn't have sex all through 2025, and I will never have prostate cancer. Even though I have some practices, right? Sexuality practices that I engage in virtually every day, right? So when you are able to break these things down like this, it begins to change. It begins to change your understanding of your body as a man. See, biologically speaking, your sexual energy is not only for sex. As a matter of fact, if you want to become a force to be reckoned with in your profession, in your industry, sexual energy is part of the raw material that you are supposed to leverage for doing the things that you do in your profession. Because sexual energy is creative energy. Sexual energy is creative energy. That's why, for me, 90 times is the max a year. Because see, each time you ejaculate, you have used 1/3 of your daily energy output. When you now ejaculate twice in a day, you're not just using your further energy, energy output, further fraction of your daily energy output. You are stressing your kidneys. Anybody that ejaculates more than once a day is stressing their kidneys. As a matter of fact, once in 4 days is how you are going to demonstrate next. You are going to be able to deploy your sexual energy for other creative purposes. Remember, I said that the primary purpose of ejaculation is for making babies, right? And one of the primary reasons why we talk about semen retention is so that you can learn how to convert that sexual energy, that elixir of life called sperm, into gaseous energy that can be used, that can be sent, that can travel upwards to your body, to your heart, to your brain, right? To your system, to your other systems. That is why you ejaculating too frequently can actually be a disservice to your health, to your total well-being, to your life output, to your business output, to your career output, right? So it is pretty important that you understand your sexuality to this degree. And like I said, this is just like seed sowing. This is just me creating a spark of curiosity in you so that you can go further to do your own research, so that you can go ahead and do your own research. If this is all that you know about sexuality, if all that you know about sexuality is what I've shared with you, you are wrong. You can't ride on this. This is too small, right? You should use all of and I hope that you actually jotted down some things that you can actually go and do more research, right? So this is a lot of people ask me, "Oh, you look younger than you age," blah blah blah. I have been learning and mastering the concept of sexuality, the concept of sexual energy for over a decade, nearing like 2 decades, since my 20s, right? So it is something that will benefit you immensely if you pay attention to it. See, sexual energy cultivation or sexuality cultivation, deliberate sexuality cultivation is not, especially if you didn't start learning it as a child before you clocked 10, is not something that is a default setting that you want to wake up to want to be learning. It's not. You have to be intentional. You have to literally write it down. You have to write, set alarm. You have to write it in your journal, more or less like including in your to-do list, that you want to be proactive about cultivating your sexual energy. Otherwise, you won't. The only sexual activity you'll be involved in will just be sex. And that is just a small fraction of the behemoth of sexuality, the behemoth of sexual energy. So this is where we're going to be pausing. Tomorrow we'll take it a step further, and we will talk majorly about women's sexuality tomorrow. So 7 p.m. I'm going to be here. So quickly, I'd like to talk about a real estate company that is offering a Valentine promo. It's a company called Alphamark Business Investment Limited. They are offering Valentine promo for 48 hours between today and tomorrow midnight. A 50% discount in their landed properties, landed estates in Ibejuleki and Ekpe. You get a 50% discount on the price of the land. So if you know anybody who might be interested in taking advantage of something like this, Ibejuleki and Ekpe is the new Lagos, right? Ibejuleki and Ekpe land is fast becoming gold, right? And this company is offering 50% discount on the prices of their estates in Ibejuleki and Ekpe. So if anybody is interested, please send me a DM, and take advantage of this Valentine promo. It is just for 48 hours. It's ending by midnight of tomorrow. You can do an initial deposit to lock it down, right? Of course, they prefer, for you to do payment on also doing initial deposit. If maybe you're just hearing about it for the first time. So if you need more details, send me a DM, right? And we can get on a call on WhatsApp, right? By the way, they were the ones who sponsored this particular series, right? Alphamark Business Investment Limited. They're the ones who sponsored this series, right? So a 50% discount promo for 48 hours, ending by midnight. You know anybody who's interested, or you know anybody who is interested in acquiring properties, landed properties, anywhere between Ibejuleki and Epe, you are going to be able to leverage their 50% discount, and it's ending by tomorrow midnight. Also, if you are someone who is interested in acquiring properties in any major city in Nigeria or international, you can visit the website propertyhunter.city. Propertyhunter.city. I know some of you are aware that I operate in the real estate industry, right? I've been a certified real estate consultant since 2019, right? So earlier this year we launched a platform called Property Hunter, propertyhunter.city, for anyone who is interested in acquiring choice properties in major cities in Nigeria and internationally. When I say internationally, I mean Accra, I mean Cotonou, I mean Abidjan, I mean South Africa, I mean Kenya, I mean Uganda, I mean Rwanda, I mean London, Manchester, Edinburgh, I mean New York, Houston, Texas, I mean Abu Dhabi, Dubai, So if you are someone who is looking to acquire properties in major cities of Nigeria or internationally, kindly visit propertyhunter.city and fill that form. And if you know anybody who is looking to acquire properties in any major city in Nigeria or internationally, tell them about propertyhunter.city. The reason we came up with the platform is because we wanted to make it easy for people to inquire for properties and then acquire the properties. Make it seamless. Ensure that there are no encumbrances. Ensure that they do not get their hands burned. A lot of people have gotten their hands burned because they don't know how to carry out due diligence. We do all of that for all the properties that we have, right? That we introduce to people, and we ensure that we reduce the possibility of people losing their money to the barest minimum or to zero, right? So, yeah, tomorrow we're going to be back, and we're going to be touching on women's sexuality, right? Does anybody have any question? Any question? Let's have it. If you want to send a request and I'll bring you up. And that's only on TikTok. Any question? If you don't have any question, tell us what your biggest takeaway has been from this broadcast. What has your biggest takeaway been? And do you have any questions? What has your biggest takeaway from this live broadcast been? Any question? What has been your biggest takeaway? You don't start transmutation. You don't start from transmutation. You start from what's that? What? You start from retention. You start from conservation. It is when you have conserved it that you can transmute it. And see, conservation starts from the mind. There are actually different exercises that I would introduce, but I cannot introduce it to you on a live broadcast like this. It has to be like a physical workshop, right? And we're looking at doing something next year. Anyways, all of that is in the pipeline, right? We have our first physical sexuality workshop, sorry, conference, and there will be breakout workshop sessions, right? We're looking at next year because I'm actually writing a book on it, right? So we want the book to be ready and also be launched at the conference slash workshop, right? To be a launch conference workshop, right? So we can't, if we're not even going to be able to talk about those techniques in the conference. It will be at the breakout sessions, right? Breakout workshops, right? So you start first with the mind, where you are telling yourself that you want to conserve your sperm. You want to be able to have sex without ejaculating. You want to be able to orgasm without ejaculating. And you know that there's a difference between orgasm and ejaculation. I'm sure you know that there's a difference, right? So, but it takes practice. I want to learn to do it. So, activate my life. I've already said it. First of all, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe you should book a session because I don't think I'll be able to go into that. It can take several minutes for me to be able to explain. So, I think you should send me a request. Send me a DM and then you can book a session. So tomorrow we're going to be back again, and tomorrow we're going to be delving for the first time. Publicly, I'm going to be delving into women's sexuality, and let's see how much justice we're going to be able to do to that. Right? So, thank you, everybody. Invite your friends. Invite the ladies I know. I know that it was mostly men that stayed here today, even though it's for both men. Women can learn from it. It's one of, you can learn some of these things and even educate your man, right? But anyways, invite the ladies that you know. Tomorrow we're going to be here by 7 p.m. Nigerian time. Tomorrow is usually supposed to be Sunday business lessons, but we are going to just use it as the final part of this Valentine Sexuality life, right? So see you guys tomorrow. Wherever you're joining from, have a beautiful rest. Go to bed tonight. You will have a beautiful night rest. From North America, enjoy the rest of the day. And see you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. Take care.